about the mic, but it's a pleasure to be here. I'm amazed at the work that you all do, and yes, it is indeed art. We'll be talking a little bit about the value of arts and culture and heritage, and talk a little bit about the Arts Council program areas that we have and our grant opportunities. But first and foremost, I'm curious, how many of you consider yourselves artists? And how many of you consider yourselves creative? How many of you are Republican? Don't answer that question. How many of you are Democrat? How many? So I probably, if I were to ask that question, I'd probably get half the room, right? Probably get half the room in each of those questions. How many of you have experienced an arts or cultural event ever in your life? Right? So okay, everyone has done that. I think oftentimes what we see and we think about, art is often put up on a wall. It's often a gallery. It's often a performance. It's often seen as a nice to have. And when funding, I'm with the Nevada Arts Council. We are a state arts agency. We'll talk a little bit about that through the presentation. When funding is great, the arts are great. Everyone wants to support it. When funding is not so great, it's a nice to have thing. It's not critical. It's not essential. What I want all of you to become after you leave this is ambassadors for the value of what you do, that it is indeed artistic, that it is indeed creative. And the idea around creativity is that you are all creative. If you decided you were going to answer your hand, if you didn't believe enough in yourself to realize that you're creative, you are. You're creative in many ways. One, I'm preaching to the choir here because a group of photographers and those that are interested in the medium, you all know that it takes a creative eye to go out there. It's something that's passionate in you. So you have that in you. Often, though, there are people who you speak with, you talk about, who will see your photography and they say, gosh, I'm not artistic at all. I could never do something like that. And I think you'd ask yourself, and what I'd ask you to do with those folks is to say, but you are creative in your own way. I'm really on a mission, so to speak, to make sure that people understand the value that creativity has in our world. You look at how we describe ourselves. If you go take a trip to Italy, where are the places that you're going to go? Most often you're going to go see architectural, well-known architectural places. You're going to go to art, you're going to go see galleries, you're going to go and see what that culture was about. That's how cultures define themselves, right? Is through their heritage, their folk life, their art, the humanities of them. Very often they don't talk about the business structure, although you can get to that. We're in a mindset right now where art is over here, oftentimes seen as a nice to have, as I mentioned, but the real work happens over here. And I can't thank Abe enough for his talk about you need to think about how you incorporate yourself into the business world, right? What is the work that you're doing, and why does it really matter? It is providing a critical need. So the arts, and when I talk about the arts, I'm talking about painting, photography, performance art, any kind of thing that you would think of in terms of art. So it's all encompassing. It encourages creativity, which is an absolute critical skill for our world. Business owners, companies, organizations, they are looking for creative individuals to work for them. The arts spur that creativity. Innovation, sources of new ideas, future concepts, and corrections. A couple years ago, when my daughter was deciding where she wanted to go to college, we attended a university and they talked about these kids, so this will be graduates of 2019, 2020, will change careers, not jobs, but careers, 7 times in their lives. They will be working for things that haven't even been invented yet, right? And I can think of this in terms of the iPhone as an example. We've talked about the iPhone a bit already today. That wasn't around when I was going to school. Many of you are in the same boat, and yet look at how it's fundamentally changed our lives. So there's many more of those things to come. Well, the arts are great sources of new ideas. Prosperity creates thousands of jobs. I can't wait to share the next slide that I'll share with you on that. But it creates thousands of jobs in Nevada and enhances our economic health. And the arts aptitudes and techniques are needed in all sectors of society. Many of you know this all too well, and I'm absolutely fascinated by this from my own work that I do. The techniques and what you need to know to be a photographer, what you need to know to shoot a great image, right? The tools that you use and mastering those tools are critical to help you do your work. They even push it a little further. We talked about printing and understanding, how do I print my images? How do I correct my images? I have a graphic design background. For about 20 years I did that as my profession. I started when Photoshop was in version 2.5. For any of you who know that, trace versions and geek out like that. That was one undo, right? No layers, one undo. You really had to plan your work. And it was very less intuitive and creative using Photoshop than it is now, right? Now you can play around and experiment. But you need to learn how to use your tools, and the arts actually provide that. If a painter has to know how to use, apply paint, has to know the brush technique, photographer needs to know what you all know. So the job scenario, U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, $7 billion, 4.7% of Nevada economy, that's arts and culture sector contributes to our state. 41,308 jobs, second as far as companies and sectors. That's real money, real work. So when people say the arts are nice to have, no, it's real money, real work. So remember those numbers if you can. Creative industries in Nevada through the counties, if you look at it, every single county, save one, in this report, has arts businesses and employs artists or people in those sectors. The only one that doesn't is Pershing County, and I'm not quite sure why. But anyone know what happens in Pershing County once a year? Big little festival, Burning Man, right? So they certainly understand, and I'm anxious to find out why there are no arts and culture sectors in there. I have a feeling that might be underrepresented. Nevadans in particular are really highly engaged in the arts, so we're seeing some really great trends and movements. This is a Nevada-specific survey. The arts promote personal well-being, help us understand our cultures and our communities. It's essential to a well-rounded K-12 education. And the government has an important role in funding the arts. So 76% of Nevadans attended an arts and cultural event. We beat that in this room. We had over 100, such as a theater, museum, zoo, or musical performance. 73% of Nevadans believe that arts are a form of pure pleasure. How many of us enjoy pure pleasure every once in a while, right? We oftentimes give ourselves the luxury to enjoy that, but it's great. And the arts help them understand cultures better. I think we're at a time in our lives where we can all understand each other better and cultures better, and the arts are certainly a great vehicle to help that. 70% agree that creativity enhances success in the workplace. 61% say their job requires them to be creative. And 70% of adults approve of funding for the arts. 75% believe that the arts help students perform better academically. 62% believe that they improve healing and healthcare experience. 49% agree that the arts are helpful to military personnel transitioning back to civilian life. And 85% of adults agree that they are good for tourism. From the tourism side, 54% of non-local event attendees said the primary purpose for their visit was to attend a specific arts and culture event. Also from a non-local, 79% local average attendee spending per person beyond the ticket price. So people come and attend an event, they're not just buying the ticket, but they're staying in a room, they're buying food, they're buying clothes to attend a particular event. And that same holds true, $24 for locals. So, the Arts Council was created back in 1967. It is a state arts agency, one of 56 state arts agencies. It is there to ensure, it's by statute in NRS 233C, to ensure that the role of the arts in the lives of the communities of the state will continue to grow and play an ever-increasing part in the cultural development and educational experiences of our residents. Again, celebrating 52 years, and our vision is which the arts enrich the lives of all residents, enhances the livability of communities, and contributes to the state's economic revitalization. When I mentioned 56 state arts agencies, you can see there's all of the 56 state arts agencies in the country. Each one is unique and different in its own way, but what's really important and ties this all together is the NEA. How many of you are familiar with the National Endowment for the Arts? How many of you are familiar that it's been zeroed out in funding the last 3 years in a row? It's typically threatened a lot, along with the NEH, the humanities, it's along with Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and yet 40% of the funding that the NEA gets comes to state arts agencies, and we turn that around, and I'll show you with what we do with some of those funds. Public purpose and critical need of state arts agencies is to ensure that every community in the U.S. receives cultural, civic, and economic and educational benefits of the arts. We support all of our rural communities. We enliven public spaces, promote health and healing, spark economic growth, reach low-income communities, and create opportunities for artists, among others. The Arts Council is really committed to active arts engagement, the pursuit of excellence in the arts for all Nevadans. We are adamant about integrating the arts into our education continuum, cultivate long-term sustainability in our creative workforces, and partnerships and collaborations, and we really want to encourage innovation in those areas. All to create a creatively and culturally vibrant state from our urban areas to our rural areas. How do we do this? Through funding. We are part of the Nevada Division of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. So we receive state funding through the state as well as the National Endowment for the Arts. That breaks down, and this might be a little hard to see in the room, but our NEA funding for fiscal year 19 was $704,000. Our state funding is about it's a little bit more than that. Total for 2019 is about $2.7 million for our budget. In SFY20, so coming into this year, we're going to be, through some really great bipartisan support, while the President has zeroed out funding for the NEA, Congress, bipartisan support of Congress has brought that up and actually raised it back up, which is great. So this year we'll receive $710,700 of federal funds, and a budget was approved. We actually, in the legislature this year, also received an extra $25,000 each year that will go back into the agency funds. So it's nice to see some of that moving up. How many of you are familiar with the Arts Council, what we do and how we do it? Many of you may know it through grants, but we have other program areas that we have, so I'll briefly touch on those. Our artist services, this could really be a direct connection to a lot of you here in the room. Honor and showcase the work of Nevada's contemporary literary, performing, and visual artists. We actually, tomorrow and Friday, are going to be paneling our artist fellowships. There are photographers who have submitted into that work, and I would encourage all of you to look at taking part in that if it fits the goal. We honor and showcase the work of Nevada's artists, as I mentioned, provide resources for artists for their career development, and help promote the vital role that artists play in the creative workforce. Arts learning is connected to really K through 12 education. The state just adopted new state fine arts standards at the end of 2018, which bring the fine arts back into our curriculum. They have been missing for about 20 years, you can imagine. And often, many of you might understand this from your experiences in different school districts, but art is an elective, right? And again, my soapbox is, I don't want it to be an elective. I want it to be encouraged. I want it to be a part of every curriculum that we have. We're working towards that. So arts education, the development and knowledge of a skill, this could be really, when you think about photography class, painting class, music class, right? That's arts, the arts education side. Arts integration is really looking at bringing the arts into subjects to help explain them better. So how can we use art to explain a complex subject in math or a complex subject in engineering, or use it to explain something that happened through history? So that's where arts integration comes into play. And then social development as a tool to provide social development for health and healing. So we have an area of the group that focuses on that. Community arts development really supports our nonprofit arts and cultural organizations. We strengthen arts infrastructure, so coming into Carson and helping Carson City understand what it wants to be as far as how it represents itself. We go into rural areas, we go into Las Vegas, we go into Reno, everywhere across the state we bring our cultural arts development team into to help solve challenges that are happening within their communities. We had a really cool experience. We convened about 50 arts leaders in Tonopah back in April. It's called our BRX, our Basin to Range Exchange, where we brought urban and rural people together to collaborate on what are the challenges that are happening in the rural areas, what are the challenges that are happening in the urban areas, and come together and find some projects that we're able to do together. So we paired up, we have 17 participants, 17 groups that encompass folks from the urban areas and folks from the rural areas that we're able to bring them together. They're all working on projects right now. And fortunately, we were able to, through some extra funding that we have, actually fund them at $1,200 each to do some of this work, to start that. So we're really looking to help spur it. Granted, $1,200 isn't going to complete the package, but it certainly will help get things moving along. So it's a really cool program that we have. Folk life. How many of you would consider yourselves connected to your culture? One person, okay. I'll bet you probably have a little bit more of that. Many times people think of folk life as indigenous cultures, native cultures, things that happened way before them. We're really working on, and that's true, that's all valid for sure. But I encourage all of you to think about your own cultures and your traditions. Where did you come from? How do you celebrate your holidays? What are the particular foods that your family has eaten? What recipes do you celebrate together? What cultures and traditions do you celebrate together? We're all connected to folk life in our own way. So we're working with the program through an NEA grant that we have to really help get people to understand this. Many of you may actually take part in cultural events or things that you do outside of your normal day-to-day life, but people may never even see that or understand that. So we're really trying to make sure people understand that folk life is living and breathing as we go. Public initiatives, these are things that we do within the agency that are special outside of, say, our planned program areas. It's where we have a 9-person board that is governor appointed, that we work to help advocate on behalf of the arts. And then we have other agency mission and goals that happen in this area. And then grants. We offered $1,220,000 worth of grant funding for 2018. That's for artists, arts organizations, and civic areas. We're able to do that through the funding that we receive from the state and through the NEA. There are grants that are available for individuals, nonprofit organizations, both arts and non-arts organizations, and government entities and public institutions. We have some parameters that have to be met for you to be eligible. Must be at least 21 years old, current Nevada resident, a U.S. citizen, and you cannot be enrolled as a degree-seeking student. Nonprofits have to be incorporated and registered, have a 501c3 and a DUNS number. Government entities include recognized tribes, state or local government, schools, and the like. We have competitive grants and non-competitive grants. Competitive grants are actually judged and paneled. We'll be doing that, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, in the folk life side, the fellowship side. These are where we convene a panel of experts from both in-state and out-of-state to judge and jury the work. And they look at all kinds of different scenarios on that. They're given a score, and the amount of money that they receive is based on that score. We have non-competitive grants that are based on kind of a first-come, first-served professional development grants that could, you could attend a conference. and then a couple other that we have in our Learning Express and our Folk Life Artists and Community Grants. All of this too, because this is a lot to take in, it's on our website, and we're happy to answer questions about it. I mentioned competitive grants, non-competitive grants. This gives you a kind of a breakdown of what grants each person or group could apply for. So from the individual side, Artist Fellowship Grant, a Fellowship Project Grant. We have project grants for artists, Folk Life Artist Grant, Professional Development Grant, and our Arts Learning Express. Our project grant for artists is a great one to start with. They encompass a 6-month period now, so the work has to happen between a 6-month time frame. We just went through our next one will start up in, I believe it's in December, so keep an eye out on our website. But apply for those. This will depend upon the work that you're doing, but it's $1,500 that could go towards a lot of different possibilities in the work that you all are doing. Our fellowship grant is a $5,000 grant, and it comprises a project. Couple of things that I wanted to touch base on in regards to our grants, and that is what we're looking for. 3 areas: artistic excellence, community impact, artistic merit, and project planning. On the artistic excellence side, demonstrates excellence, achievement of applicant and any collaborating artists. So we're really looking to make sure that the caliber of work that we're awarding is high, right? So again, applaud all of you. Being here is a great example of how you're trying to improve your ability. I heard discussions too talking about hobbyists versus professionals or people that are doing it. And I guess I look at it bracing all those sides. But by being here and doing the work that you're doing and trying to find ways to get better, I think you're really starting to demonstrate that idea of artistic excellence, right? It is each of you is very unique in your approach, in the images that you select, in what you shoot. And I think that, to me, is your biggest asset. And when you're marketing yourself and when you're branding yourself, think about that. How are you different from everyone else? Those are big differentiators that can set you apart. How are your images different from others? And the idea of hobbyists, I will just state real quickly that I remember being in the graphic design area, and many of you will open up a Word document or a Pages document, and you can see all kinds of templates that are already pre-designed, right? And I remember oftentimes thinking, well, people then think, oh, God, I'm a designer. Look, I'll go in and grab one of these templates and do it. And you can, and they're nice. But there's a big difference between a template and someone that is really working with you directly as a designer, right? Because they're there to help solve some different challenges, and they're making you unique. And I say that from the same standpoint of a camera doesn't make a photographer. It's one of the tools that you have, right? But ultimately, you all and what you bring, and the passion and the technique and your desire to be great, really, and that artistic excellence is what's going to set you apart. So don't let the tools that everyone has access to, that's a good thing in a lot of ways, you just have to push through that. Community impact is another area that we really focus on, and what is the significant impact that it has on a community. So in other words, and this might, this can be very different things here, but looking how it affects where that image is, where that image was taken, where that image is going to be exhibited. That is really important for us, and it comes down to from the NEA. And it demonstrates impact to the artist's personal craft and discipline. Accessibility, you'll see on there the idea around accessibility. All the programming that we do, we actually require accessibility components. So this is how can those with, it falls into our disability compliance with federal law and such things as audio description, sign language, interpretation, closed captioning, large print, and the like. It's difficult from photography sometimes to hit all those things, but be thinking about that too. And then project planning and management, and I think this goes back a little bit to as we were talking about the business side of things. Making sure that the work you're doing is well planned, well thought through, clear objectives, provides a budget, and it comes back to understanding much what Abe was talking about here, like making sure that you understand that you are a business and treat yourself that way, and make sure that you are paying yourself, you're taking, accounting for the work that you're doing, and really getting back to that idea that this is not a nice to have thing, but it's really critical, and you're doing great work that's meaningful and that you should be paid for and compensated for. Okay, that's perfect. We're great. So a couple things that I will just say if you are going to go and do some grant, write or apply for some of our grants. You can call us if you have any questions on it. One of the biggest things, and it's kind of comical to have to say this, but read the guidelines thoroughly. You'd be amazed at how many people like anything. Just, I don't understand. Well, read the guidelines because they're pretty straightforward. And literally follow them, right? It's a good thing. What's also cool is that we offer, all of our meetings have to be open meeting because of the state. And so we offer panel reviews, and you can go in and listen to the panel actually talk about your work. Much like you're doing critique work here, sometimes that's hard to hear, right? It's also the best thing. And I'm a plein air painter as well, and I still do some graphic design work every once in a while. Kippy can attest to that. I'll come in and we'll talk about those things. But it is hard to get your work critiqued sometimes. But you just need to make sure that you one, believe in yourselves, because you're all very capable. You're all great at the work that you're doing. You're there constantly striving to try to get better. Don't take that critique as a negative, right? Take it as a way that you can learn and grow. And we provide that through our panel review process. And sometimes you're like, what were they saying? Right? I can't believe that they said that. And I know when I've had my work critiqued in my life, you can be defensive at times, and you can want to do that. And oftentimes in the commercial world with a client saying, I don't like orange. Like, but orange is the perfect color for what you're trying to do because of what it connotates. I don't like orange. Okay, so we get rid of orange, right? It's being able to let go of some of those guards that you put up and really look at it and how can you get better, right? How can you get better? And lastly, I'll leave you and I'm happy to answer some questions. So these are our 2018 results from both our grants and our program areas that we do. We, in 2018, we reached all 17 counties, 50 cities, 139 zip codes, 395 grant requests for a total of $1,500,000. Through our funding, we were able to grant 309 grants for $1,020,000. Our grants often require a match for either a cash or in-kind match. $66,336,000 was what our match and in-kind contributions were of that. You may ask how much of that was in-kind and how much of that was cash. $61 million was cash. That means that the entities that receive our grants are matching those funds with cash. Again, real money, real work. Over 1,300,000 people were engaged, and of those, 376,000 were pre-K through 12. We have a staff of 13 and a budget of $2.7 million. I'm pretty impressed by those standards and by the results that we have. 2019 is looking to be a little better, which is great. But that's because of the work that we're able to do with the funding of the state and the NEA. If you get the opportunity to encourage your legislators and your national representatives to keep funding those entities on behalf of what we do, I certainly appreciate that. And now, if there are any questions that we'd like to ask, yes.
You're certainly working with all the counties and lots of people. On one hand, you're promoting art, and you could go after, shall we say, pure art, whatever that means. On the other hand, you are working with these counties that have economics and so forth. And today we're working with Nevada Magazine, the tourism organization. Does some percentage of your either projects or goals or themes for the year try to match up with the tourism organization and their goals for the year, or is yours completely separate and more for the sake of the art for itself and your goals?
Yeah,
there's some overlap there.
Great question. Right now, it's separate. We're not really integrated to what we are a part of tourism, and we're a part of that, and we're making sure that we're integrating in better ways, but tourism is not dictating where that funding goes. So we're solely on our own.
Of the statute of the 86 grants that were declined, can you characterize the difference between declined on merit and declined on funding? How that applies to the broader, not just 2018, but in general?
Great question. So the reason that a grant isn't accepted could be eligibility or scoring. Right? So we have, if it's an eligibility issue, like they don't meet the right eligibility issues, they didn't submit all the proper work, they didn't answer the questions correctly, they're not a state resident, those are things that would exclude them that way. And then from the scoring side, again, as we are looking at artistic excellence and artistic merit, there are scores, applicants who will receive a score of 95 as an example, and those that receive a score of 65 or 55. And while we would love to be able to fund everybody, what happens when we start to broaden that up is that those that are getting the 95 are not able to get as much funding because we're trying to fund so many people. So we cut a threshold in there, say 60, 70%. And this is a great conversation that we're going to be having next week with our board, actually, is we want to tighten that up a little bit. This is because it's not to exclude people per se, but it's to say, look, the work and a grant application that you're trying to do is a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. And we want to award that artistic excellence and that artistic merit. At the same time, for those that don't make the cut, we want to work with them, and we do, to try to find ways to improve their grant writing skills. We're doing workshops on that, trying to help them through our different program areas to elevate their game.
Of the 395 grant requests, what would you say is the percentage that's photography related?
Most of
just
those, yeah, and I don't know the actual percentage. I can't give you a percentage of that, but those would be in our, what were our jackpot grants, as we call it, and then the fellowship. And I know our fellowship has had photography, and in fact, we're going to be looking at that here. But there are photographers who have been submitted to be in our artist fellowship and have won. So it is there, right? We have it's part of our visual arts. You're up against painters and other visual artists in that field. Ideally, if we could separate those things out, we'd love to, right? So that you're up against photographers and everyone's different. But right now, you're in the visual artists side.
So regarding being roster artists for the Nevada Arts Council, is there every few years do you open that up for new applicants?
Yeah, it's about every 3 years we look at new applicants that can be roster artists. These are people that can go into schools and be available as a resource into our schools to go in and teach their discipline through that. So yeah, every 3 years we open that up.
And so when is the next opportunity going to come up?
I think it's in 2 years. 2 years, yeah. And you can check our website for that information. We'll be pushing that out too.
Out of curiosity, how many people here have worked with the Arts Council on anything? Okay. So, and I also wanted to, should be lots more hands next time. Cindy also is part of the Basin to Range program that Tony was talking about. She's working with that. So I don't know if anybody's got, besides you three, have got anything going currently, but just to show you, this is real people in our group, and it's people we know, and they're doing it. So you can do it too. You can help kids learn art.
Yeah, and yeah, further your work through some grants. I mean, definitely look at that from the individual side. So take advantage of it. It's there. Great. All right. Thank you.